John was born in Nashville, and he died in Franklin. Even though just 20 miles separate these two towns, he spent many years and traveled many miles in the service of his country. John was raised in Pulaski, Tennessee with his family, and after he completed his schooling there, he attended West Point, the U.S. Military Academy. After graduating in 1846, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant and sent to Mexico, because the Mexican War started that year. He served there bravely, and after the war ended, he was sent to Fort Snelling in the Minnesota Territory, where he was named aide-de-camp to the governor there. That's where I met John. My father was a military surgeon, and he was also stationed at Fort Snelling. John and I fell in love, and we married in 1854. We had our first child in 1855 and 5 more in the next 7 years. We were in California in 1861. John was stationed at Fort Crook in Shasta in Northern California when the war came. John had a big decision to make. He had spent 15 years serving his country. But what would he do? He decided to follow his heart and go south. He resigned his commission in the U.S. Army and became a Confederate. He was first named a captain, and he fought all over the South. By the time of the Atlanta campaign, he was a brigadier general. And of course, Atlanta, that battle there led inexorably to the Franklin battlefield. On the day of the battle, John led his men into battle. He was in one of those initial charges, and he was very quickly wounded in the shoulder. He was encouraged to leave the battlefield and seek treatment, but he was heard saying, "No, I'm going to see my men through." Many years after the war, I received a letter from a man from Indiana who had been a lieutenant colonel in the Union Army. He witnessed my husband's death. Here's what he wrote. "Your husband rode up to our works and, cheering our men, made an attempt to leap his horse over them. The horse fell upon the top of the embankment, and the general was caught under him, the horse, pierced with bullets. As soon as the charge was repulsed, our men sprang over the works and lifted the horse, while others dragged the general from under him. He was perfectly conscious and knew his fate. He asked for water, as all dying men do in battle, as the lifeblood drips from the body. One of my men gave him a canteen of water, while another brought an armful of cotton from an old gin nearby and made him a pillow. The general gallantly thanked them, and in answer to our expressions of sorrow at his sad fate, he said, 'It is the fate of a soldier to die for his country,' and expired." Another Union soldier talked about how his superior officer tried to spare my husband's life. He said, "Our Colonel Stewart tried hard to save the life of General John Adams and called to his men not to fire on him, but it was too late. Adams rode his horse over the ditch to the top of the parapet and undertook to grasp the old flag from the hands of the color sergeant when he fell, horse and all, shot by the color guard. I was a re-enlisted veteran and went through 27 engagements," he said. "I'm sure that Franklin was the hardest fought field that I ever stood upon." John's body was removed here to Carnton, but it was too late. He was laid on the porch and later taken to Pulaski to his family and buried there, and he rests there still today. I never remarried. In the years to come, I lived with my parents until they died, and then I lived with one of my sons until in 1905 I died. My youngest son died in 1946. I want to thank you for coming out and for remembering all of our sacrifices.